Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. Sorry, I'm just gonna click that OK for the recording. And now I can see and hear everybody. Well, Tom, thank you for that introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, thank you for having me at your club tonight. I'm just going to share my screen and get started. Can you all see that? Okay, very good. Although I do have a segment of this presentation which is dedicated to questions, feel free to raise your electronic hand and ask a question with respect to clarity or on anything that I'm saying throughout the presentation. And Tom, if you'd be so kind as to maybe watch the screen for that, because I can't see everyone. So, understanding the governing documents. Just before we got started, I was asked what the impetus for this presentation was, and I was starting to say that I've been asked many questions with respect to the governing documents over the years, and of course things change and continue to change. And it's hard to stay on top of such an exciting read, but I've done my best. For certain, I will make my own errors along the way, but that only means that it gives us another occasion to go back, review, understand, and hopefully interpret. So if we get started, understanding the governing documents, we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about first an objective. And the objective tonight is to deepen our understanding of the purpose and function of each document, the reasons behind the policies, protocols, procedures, bylaws, and constitutions, in particular the club constitution. What we're going to look at tonight in order is just an introduction to the subject, an overview of the governing documents, the whys behind policies and protocols, a couple of real life examples, compliance and adaptability. Then we're going to have some formal question and answer, and I'm going to give you some resources, okay? And we'll get to that. All right, so introduction. What's the purpose of the governing documents? Well, from the perspective of a parliamentarian, a Toastmasters parliamentarian, the governing documents are the bylaws, policies, protocols, procedures, definitions, club constitution, international constitution, and these things serve as the backbone of our organization. And I know we talk about respect, service, integrity, and excellence. Well, this is the integrity part. It's the operational clarity that these documents give to help us operate along the mission, the vision, and the core values that Toastmasters always endeavor to uphold. They provide us foundational information for our clubs, areas, divisions, and districts, as well as the international organization. It defines the roles of leaders. It defines the election process. It helps us define member eligibility and behavioral standards. These documents create a consistency and a fairness in how we approach everything that we do in Toastmasters. And it ensures that each member is treated with, as I started with, respect, integrity, the service that we need to offer, and the excellence that we always strive to give, regardless of your level of experience, regardless of where you find yourself in the Toastmasters world. We want to create an environment of respect. We look at uniformity and consistency. We look at fairness and equity. We look at the clarity of the roles, and we look at alignment with the Toastmasters vision. And of course, this all put together gives us a level of accountability and transparency, which is in keeping with the purpose of Robert's Rules of Order as well. It's about accountability and making sure that everything we do is above board and fair to the minority and the majority. right? So when we talk about, sorry, I've just lost my place here. When we talk about the role of a parliamentarian, the role of the parliamentarian in Toastmasters is to interpret the information before us, understanding Robert's Rules of Order, understanding the governing documents, and acting as a consultant to the district director and other leaders in the district. And these documents are meant to support the things that we are providing informationally to the district leadership. And of course, as a district parliamentarian, we are that consultant that the district director can lean on when they themselves are not sure about how to proceed. That there's a rule for everything. And rules are not carved in stone. Actually, I only know of one set of rules carved in stone. The rest are either electronic or written on paper. But these rules have changed over time and allow us to adapt to new situations as they present themselves. And I know, Jenny, you talked earlier about, sometimes holding an opinion that isn't popular. And that opinion is rooted in an interpretation of these rules. And I'm not saying whether you should or shouldn't be popular. I mean, you're immensely popular, in my opinion. And I love your rabbit ears, always at alert. But the fact is that diverging opinions are okay. And it's how we treat these opinions that is consulted by the parliamentarian to the leaders in the district. And that's also why parliamentarian is a non-voting role, because we represent an authority, and that bottom line interpretation, which is trusted and enacted by the governing, the presiding officer, typically the district director. So the Toastmasters International Governing Documents and the International Constitution. Well, the Constitution is the highest level document, and it outlines the organization's mission, vision, and values. It's going to provide that framework for Toastmasters, which provides us our purpose, emphasizes our goals of fostering communication and leadership around the world. And the Constitution defines the core governance structure and the principles that all clubs and members need to follow if we're going to be successful. An example of this would be if there were questions about whether a club could focus exclusively on public relations. Well, the Constitution clarifies that all clubs should align with Toastmasters' mission of fostering communication and leadership. And that means that each club must uphold those core values and support a comprehensive approach to the skills and development of all members. So, yes, you can emphasize certain aspects of learning in the world, but if you're going to be true to the Pathways education system, for instance, you have to have that variety, and public relations is pretty broad. So maybe that's a poor example on my part. Maybe we want to talk about exclusively clubs that are humorous, and that can get very narrow, even though humor is a very broad topic. And so we have to remember that the Constitution is what helps us define these things. District administrative bylaws is the next aspect of the Toastmasters governing documents, and this applies specifically to district administration. It outlines the roles of leadership in the district, be that the district director, the PQD, the CGD, area and division directors, public relations manager, finance manager, etc. And it gives us direction. It means that this covers the policies on district finance, how meetings are conducted, the procedures related to that, and facilitating a standardized approach for the district operations. So it's really incredible when we see that districts get lost at times with their DEC or district council meetings because they don't know how to proceed. And that means it's an immediate red flag that they have not either looked at or understood the governing documents. Well, these district administrative bylaws refer to very specific things, sometimes giving us timelines, procedures, limits, maybe term limits or limits to authority. And this, again, creates uniformity across the organization. Policies and protocols. Well, policies and protocols, these are the guidelines that provide specific direction on membership standards. Again, some financial procedures, branding, and what the DCP or Distinguished Club Program is all about. Policies and protocols enable us, they don't enable us, they are adaptable, they evolve, they change along with the organizational needs. Now, sometimes this may seem very slow, and in real terms it is, but other things happen quite quickly. So these are meant to cover aspects of dues, leadership eligibility, conflict resolution, and standards of conduct, always promoting professionalism and good process throughout the organization. The Toastmasters policies and protocols are those guidelines that help clubs maintain their standards of excellence, and that allows us to make recommendations to update these things. And that's, I guess, where the slow part comes in. For instance, would be if a club is offering discounted dues to new members as a promotion. Well, our policies and protocols don't allow for that. You would address this by refreshing people's memories as to the rules and saying that, there's a fairness associated with this. Why is someone new paying less than someone who is a 10-year member? And that's not fair, right? So it helps us maintain that fairness, even though we're all accessing the same level of information. If discounts are to be offered or fees frozen, that's up to the international organization to relate, not at the club level. That $60 that we pay every 6 months is unchanging unless ordered by Toastmasters International. Where a club might have flexibility is in the amount of fee that they charge in relationship to its own operating expenses. Some clubs get their space for free. Some clubs are exclusively virtual. Some clubs have very little to no operating costs, and others have quite expensive operating costs because their rent is $400 a month or $1,000 a month. And that can get quite expensive for a Toastmasters club, and those costs have to be mitigated in some way. This is also covered in terms of, supporting members who might have financial difficulty, where the club cannot pay a member's dues, but an individual member may be able to sponsor another member's membership. That sounded redundant because I said member quite a bit. Does that make sense to everyone? The Toastmasters Club Constitution. Well, this governs the operation of each club. It details the responsibilities of the club officers. It outlines the election process and the meeting requirements, as well as membership guidelines. So clubs can set certain membership guidelines. For instance, advanced clubs. Advanced clubs could say that a criteria of membership in this particular Toastmasters club is that you've achieved a DTM. Or it could be that you have completed a certain level within pathways of any pathway, and that the club is going to focus on evaluation or things of that nature. inappropriately might be that, you have to have the WhatsApp application on your phone in order to be a member of this club. Well, that's an unreasonable limitation, and we can't engage in things that are contrary to diversity, equity, and inclusion, because those are related to a person's being as opposed to what we're trying to learn in the organization. So there is a certain degree of flexibility related to membership. But again, the process of a meeting is well outlined in Toastmasters. And we know that we have to hit certain marks to provide the program that Toastmasters is asking us to provide. And will vary depending on how much time is available in a particular club meeting, 1 hour or 45 minutes for typically noontime clubs, to a couple of hours for evening clubs. Now, clubs, this document again covers club operations, and it details the responsibilities of the people in the club. So it tells you what the club president should be doing, and it tells you what the VP Education, membership, or public relations should be doing, and outlines the roles of treasurer, secretary, and sergeant at arms. It even tells you what your past presidents should be doing, and that they might be the chair of your club leadership committee, and who runs the election at a Toastmasters club, and things of that nature. So the whys behind the policies and protocols. Well, policies represent consistency and professionalism in a Toastmasters club. And that's across the organization. It covers areas like branding and conduct and dues. Again, and you hear these things because the different policies, bylaws, protocols, procedures, etc., touch all of these aspects. And I guess one of the things I'm learning tonight that I hadn't started to mention is the priority of these things. So maybe I'll circle back to that in the question and answer area. But branding policies become standardized. The organizational image is impacted by these policies. It helps Toastmasters maintain its recognizability as a trusted education organization worldwide. And if we start to mess around with branding, well, then we're not just not following policies, we're actually impacting Toastmasters around the world. I mean, imagine if the McDonald's Golden Arches were purple all of a sudden. You'd think something was wrong, or that your 3-year-old child in the back seat of the car somehow knows that those are McDonald's Golden Arches and what they represent. And that's the power of branding. And our policies are meant to uphold that and enhance that power for the organization. It governs, these policies also govern our conduct in order to create a safe, respectful environment. It defines our appropriate behaviors. It doesn't limit us in terms of what we can talk about, but it certainly reminds us of the bottom line fact in any Toastmasters meeting: know your audience, right? You're not going to talk about politics to an apolitical group, or you might not talk about the Republican Party to the Democrats, because you're not going to be well received. So this is about making sure that you've created a safe environment for people to present in. It is reinforcing our organization's commitment to inclusivity. It's about creating policies for dues that provide a fair approach to financial contributions and still allows the organization to operate in a way that, one, we've become accustomed to, and allows us to grow and flourish. And it supports sustainable resources, meaning getting all of that information out to the districts and from the districts on down to the members, and making sure that everyone has fair and easy access to that information. And that's what alignment is about. Alignment at the district level, which Rick, I think, was talking about as we were leading into this meeting, but also club alignment that we talk about every year in districts. This is about fair and sustainable distribution of resources in the district so that one area director doesn't have 5 clubs that are on the brink of extinction and another area director has 5 clubs that are just growing like crazy. Well, who's going to work harder? And is that fair? Geographic distribution of resources as well. So some districts are larger than others. Toastmasters policies cover all of these essential areas. Again, branding, conduct, dues. That's very, very important to the sustainability of the organization. Now, protocols establish the structure, the guidelines for club operation. Then particularly in meetings where the formats of the meeting or the election process at the club or at the district level and at the international level for that matter, meeting protocols ensure consistency in the member experience so that no matter what club you go to in the world, although there will be some differences, you can recognize a Toastmasters meeting. We all start by saying, whether we should or not, and don't necessarily do it in the outside world, but certainly in Toastmasters, we say, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. And that is a protocol. It ensures that we engage effectively in the skill building that Toastmasters represents. As far as election protocols go, again, it's about promoting fairness and transparency. And there are often things that we don't necessarily understand the reason for. And that's where we need to go back to the organization for some clarification and expression of the why behind it. Because by standardizing things like nominations and voting procedures, it puts everybody on a level playing field. It empowers the members and makes it easier for them to choose to participate in a meaningful way, at least at the club level. Okay? These protocols provide specific instructions, and let's go back to meeting structure. It's providing every Toastmasters club to follow that similar format. The consistency helps the members know what to expect, and it allows them to focus on the skills that we're here to develop. The timer, the evaluator, the general evaluator, the grammarian role, the quizmaster role, the chairperson, invocation, etc. All of these things have been standardized and represent the development of a particular skill in Toastmasters, and it's outlined in the governing documents. Again, for the election process, it's meant to ensure that that process is fair and democratic, that people don't create dynasties. And when we do see dynastic type behavior in clubs, it's because people have either been ignorant to the governing documents or they've set them aside, realizing that most other people are ignorant to the governing documents. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So let's look at a couple of, I've called them case studies, but maybe these are examples that you may have experienced. Okay, so number 1, financial management and compliance. Number 2 is going to be about membership standards and inclusivity. And number 3 is going to be about club officer responsibilities and distinguished club program success. Okay, so number 1. In a district, any district, the treasurer has proposed using a portion of the budget to sponsor a high-profile event that hadn't been pre-approved. Now, the members have raised concerns, leading the district director to consult the Toastmasters financial policy. Now, this policy mandates that any expenditures outside of the approved budget must be reviewed and authorized by the district's finance team. So far, everybody with me? So if we are adhering to this policy, the district may have avoided potential misuse of funds and maintained a transparent process. Right? Because when the district reviews these things, it's seen by the finance manager, it's seen by the audit committee, and it's usually brought up as part of the financial report at a given DEC meeting. The adherence to this policy is not only protecting the district's finances, it also has reassured the members that the money derived from their dues is being managed responsibly. And it reinforces the trust and the accountability of the people that we have elected to represent us. Case study number 2 would be about membership standards and inclusivity. So a club has faced a challenging situation where one member has repeatedly dominated the meeting. They're creating an uncomfortable environment for others, and many members were reluctant to participating, fearing interruptions or dismissive responses. So the club's president referred to Toastmasters membership standards, which emphasizes respect and supportive interaction and inclusivity. After a private discussion with the member, outlining these standards, the individual adjusted their behavior and allowed space for others so that the exchange preserves a welcoming environment. It encourages more members to participate, to engage, and actively participate. And by adhering to the standards, the club has upheld a culture of mutual respect and inclusivity. And that's vital to the personal and collective growth of every member. It supports that safe atmosphere. If, however, the member had resisted and continued to dominate or was rude in return, that this is where you could, again, rely on the governing documents and form a disciplinary committee. And this is why it's also important to vote members in. Okay, some clubs, many clubs, I dare even say most clubs, get voting in members. Voting in members, one, creates a bit of exclusivity to the role. It's you are applying to be a member. And to be a member, although we are very willing to accept any and all people, insofar as they are willing to adhere to the code of conduct and respect all their members. And in this example, respectful behavior was not being delivered by that member. They were dominating, they were controlling, and they were dismissive, if not demeaning. So the governing documents give us recourse and standards to uphold in the meeting environment. So number 3 is officer responsibilities and distinguished club program success. So again, a random club where the officers are focused diligently on their roles. They've attended club officer training. And a particular particularly in member engagement and record keeping. So again, this is, everybody's participating in the program, they're keeping minutes. The Vice President of Education has tracked member progress and pathways, and they've coordinated membership and encouraged members to work towards awards, meaning completing levels and earning recognition, because recognition creates that good feeling, allows us to taste those endorphins and want more. The president ensured meetings followed the club constitution, the agenda, and enhance the structure and effectiveness of the meeting. This commitment led to several members achieving educational milestones, either completing pathways or levels within a pathway, or a high performance leadership completion, or taking on leadership roles in the district, or completing a DTM, or mentoring, or coaching. And what that means is that by the end of the year, because you have that high level of member engagement, the points come. And by the end of the year, the club had exceeded their DCP targets. And the DCP, although we strive to get 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 should really be the minimum. If we're doing the things that we are expected to do in Toastmasters consistently, and everyone in the club is participating to that level, then there's no reason, if we were tracking, that you wouldn't earn 20 DCP points if that were possible, because the level of education awards is high, and because club officers get trained, and because we submit our documents on time, and because we're engaging in public relation practices that bring guests into the club, and we provide them guest kits that allow them to understand what Toastmasters is about, and we do that in the most welcoming way possible, that these people become members, and then they stay, and the cycle perpetuates itself. Well, earning this recognition builds the enthusiasm in the club, because even though we don't necessarily do it for the recognition, it sure is nice when we get it. It makes us feel good. And by helping people be engaged, leading by example, being accountable leaders, that fosters the member engagement, which fosters the achievement, which in turn makes for a strong club. Does that make sense for everyone?
Yes. Could you please repeat that last 2-3 sentences? That was excellent.
Certainly. So by following the responsibilities of leadership in the club, and making sure that all of the things that we are meant to do at a minimum through the DC is measured by the Distinguished Club Program, you earn achievements. And by recognizing people for their achievements, they like the feeling. It encourages them to do more. That means that you have a high level of engagement in the club. In turn, that high level of engagement means that everybody's participating and the workload is spread out lightly across everyone. It means that your VP of Public Relations is doing things to entice guests to come into the club. When those guests come into the club, the VP of Membership is giving them a guest kit, partnering them with an experienced member so that they can understand what's going on. And asking those guests to become members. And the cycle continues to perpetuate itself, because those guests feel safe and included, and they in turn, once joining, participate. And the cycle continues. And so once you're in that upward cycle, it's very easy to continue those best practices. Conversely, if you're in that downward cycle and not doing them, you lose track of what's important. You don't understand why you're failing, and you just go down the drain. And that's what happens to most clubs that fail. They don't pay attention to what's important. Does that kind of answer your question, Bart? I know I didn't use exactly the same words. Okay. So
Thank you. I just wanted to hear it again. That's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you for enjoying the sound of my voice. Okay. Compliance and adaptability. Well, mission and values. We know that I'm not going to cite the Toastmasters mission and vision, but our core values are respect, integrity, service, and excellence. And if all members embody those four things, often referred to as RISE, even though these are not in the order that we see them in the governing documents. I like the RISE acronym here. It means that, sorry, I've lost my spot. Okay. So the bylaws and the policies that enable Toastmasters clubs to remain aligned with the organization's values still allow us the flexibility to meet local needs. And COVID actually provides us a great example here. Toastmasters had a policy with regards to how meetings were going to be conducted through this lockdown period that we experienced around the world to varying degrees. And even if Toastmasters had said, we're okay with you meeting in person, if your local health authority in your region or your geographic region or your county said, no, we're not ready for that yet. Incidences of COVID are still really high, and the health authority says we're not doing that. Well, then you don't do that. It allows you the flexibility to adhere to the local law, right? And that communicating these developments is foundational in leadership development in the organization. It ensures that each club contributes to the mission, and it means that we can adapt to what needs to be done, right? We have the flexibility with our agendas, for instance, that if you've been meeting for 2 hours for years and all of a sudden your circumstances of your meeting have changed, you can shorten that to 1 hour. You're able to cut things away from the agenda and still fulfill the educational needs that the program represents. It allows you to schedule activities that fit the preferences of members of your club, like tonight, right? I'm an invited guest speaker speaking on a topic that is pertinent to the objectives of this club. And it creates an engaging experience without deviating from the Toastmasters goals. Here's another example. It says, while club meetings are structured and standardized, the flexibility to include creative themes and adapt formats to suit local interests keeps the experience fresh, relevant, and interesting, which is one thing that area directors look for on their club visits. It's something that's brought up in moments of truth, and it's alluded to when you develop your club success plan, beginning of every Toastmaster year. Compliance. Well, compliance with the governing documents plays a crucial role in conflict prevention. Certainly, we talk about conflict resolution within the governing documents, but adherence or compliance with the governing documents is actually a preventive measure and represents fair governance. So just like what we say about the democratic process is that no matter how things turned out, if the process you undertook to achieve whatever result you achieve was fair and just, even if you end up with a result that you didn't want or didn't expect, you can respect it because you achieved it through legitimate means. Right? And I mean, that's the conversation that's probably going on in the US right now, because some people like Donald Trump. Actually, most people appeared to have liked Donald Trump, and he was elected president, and other people are vehemently opposed to Donald Trump. But if they respect the democratic process, he got there by legitimate means. And that has to be respected. Right? So when we have these standards for election processes and membership standards and meeting conduct and the membership experience, a sense of fairness and transparency is developed. An example would be if a dispute arises over election results, which I was just saying, election results, the club can reference the election protocol to ensure that a clear, fair process which was applied. And that removes ambiguity and it restores trust. So similarly, membership standards help create an inclusive, respectful environment, and all members should feel valued. So even if they don't agree, you can still have that respect and value people's opinion. When clubs consistently adhere to these guidelines, trust is built and it prevents misunderstandings and enables fair conflict resolution. Just like in that club example where you have the dominant member, if things are explained clearly and fairly, there should be no resistance unless they themselves are engaging and committed to unfair practices, which again still gives clubs and leadership recourse with respect to members who behave inappropriately. So that trust in the process and that trust in others is foundational to the existence of Toastmasters. And we wouldn't have lasted 100 years if people didn't think in this way. Okay, so overall compliance with the structure, the provided structures, and an adaptive behavior that Postmaster clubs can engage in will help us thrive and remain a globally recognized education and leadership organization. Now, I've kind of talked about both avoiding conflicts and the mission and values. And there we go. We're at the question